Last week, we discussed how Missouri Republicans were ready to pounce on a bill sponsored by the owner of a reformed, racist car wash, owner of which Republican Representative Brian Science from Branson sponsored a bill which would include giving a 30-year prison sentence to patients who seek care for tubal pregnancies. Yeah, you heard that right. If you haven't been watching the show or you're not following me on Twitter, definitely want to at Chainsaw CCC. If you're not following me on Facebook, Facebook.com/chainsaw money. We've been talking about this for weeks now. In the state of Missouri, their trigger law included original language sponsored by Representative Science that would include for tubal pregnancy treatment, which the answer to, of course, is abortion. The alternative of which is bleeding to death, hemorrhaging internally and bleeding to death. 30-year imprisonment as a punishment for treatment of tubal pregnancies. Now, Missouri is not the exception to the rule, and neither are disgusting state legislators like Republican Representative Brian Seitz. Associated Press reported in abortion fight, conservatives push to end all exceptions. And we'll talk about this a little bit further as it hits closer to home in a bit. Angela Housley was halfway through her pregnancy when she learned the fetus was developing without parts of its brain and would likely die within hours or days of birth if it survived that long. The news came during her 20-week ultrasound. The technician got a really horrible look on her face, Housley said, and we got the really sad news that our baby was encephalic. I don't play words with friends. Encephalic. It was 1992 and abortion was legal in Idaho, though she had to dodge the anti-abortion protesters and stochastic terrorists who, stalked these places outside the Boise hospital after the procedure. If the same scenario were to happen later this year, she'd likely be forced to carry to term. That's because Idaho, which bans abortion after 6 weeks, is one of at least 22 states with laws banning abortion before the 15th week. Many of them lacking exceptions for fetal viability, rape, incest, or even the health of the women. Several of those bans would take effect if the U.S. Supreme Court issues a ruling overturning the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, as the leaked draft of the opinion suggests. Such exceptions were once regularly included in even the most conservative anti-abortion proposals. But as the battle over abortion access heats up, experts on both sides of the issue say exceptions were a temporary stepping stone intended to make anti-abortion laws more palatable. Yikes. Wow. We'll talk about some polls here in a minute. Many of the current abortion bans are designed as trigger laws, automatically going into effect, and the High Court overturns the nationwide right to abortion. That ruling is expected to be released late June, early July. Alabama, Oklahoma have enacted bans with no exceptions. Now, as we talked about last week, the governor of Oklahoma has already decried that he wants to make sure that Oklahoma is the most pro-life state ever. So this is what they mean, folks. The Republican sponsors envisioned the legislation as a vehicle to challenge Roe in court and said they could add rape and incest exceptions later if Roe's overturned. They're basically using people, in this particular situation, women, as collateral damage. And again, Representative Seitz, are you there? In the head, because clearly there's nothing there but worms. In the debate, we tried to talk reasonably with them and, say, what happens if you win? This is the law. You're not going to have the opportunity to change it before people get hurt. Right. Several of the states, Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas. Boy, I don't think Mississippi's on that list, but boy, that gets interesting. Also have bans or trigger laws in place that lack exceptions for rape or incest, according to Guttmacher Institute and Associated Press reporting, which is where the majority of our sources come from, is AP. The majority of the articles that we talk about are either come from AP or are otherwise. Idaho and Utah have exceptions for rape or incest, but require the pregnant woman to first file a police report and then to prove to the abortion provider the report was made. Yeah. So there's that. Only about a third of sexual assaults are reported to police. According to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, Texas and Idaho allow exceptions for medical emergencies, but leave that interpretation up to physicians, making some critics fear doctors will wait to intervene until a woman's near death. Public support for total abortion bans appears to be low based on the Pew Research Center survey released Friday, conducted in March. The survey shows that just 8% of the U.S. adults think abortion should be illegal in all cases, with no exceptions. 8%. 61% of adults say abortion should be legal in most or all circumstances. Surveys consistently show that Americans have nuanced attitudes around the legality of abortion depending on the stage of pregnancy, circumstances of conception, and health of the mother or fetus, which all of that was, for the most part included. Roe didn't just allow for all and any abortions just, willy-nilly. It did allow for states to pass legislation, and some did. But that's not something that you're going to hear on Fox News, Newsmax, or them other guys with the crazy initials in their news stations. Republicans in the state were split on the issue last year, with Governor Asa Hutchinson and Senator Missy Irvin expressing reservations about the lack of protection for sexual assault survivors. Do you know how many young girls are on suicide watch because they were raped, because they were a victim of incest? Asked Irvin, who ultimately voted for last year's bill. The sponsors of last year's ban, Republican Senator Jason Rupert, defended the lack of exceptions, saying it still allowed the use of emergency contraception. But we'll get into that shortly. Elizabeth Nash, a state policy analyst for the abortion rights supporting Guttmacher Institute, said that 86% of pending proposals for abortion restrictions this year, only a few, including one in Idaho, New Jersey, and West Virginia, include rape and incest exceptions. The exceptions were always incredibly limited, she said. You might think these exceptions are helpful, but in fact, they're so restricted, they're very hard to use. Troy Newman, president of the National Anti-Abortion Group Operation Rescue, has said exceptions to abortion restrictions for rape and incest and to protect a woman's life in the past have been thrown in there to appease some centrists. Newman said his group based in Wichita opposes rape and incest exceptions. Their rationale: don't punish the baby for the crime of the father. There we go. That's coming clean. The Ohio legislature is weighing a trigger law that lacks sexual assault exceptions. During a hearing last month, the bill's GOP sponsor, Representative Jean Schmidt, caused controversy when she called pregnancy resulting from rape an opportunity for the rape victim to make a determination about what she's going to do to help that life be a productive human being. Bless her heart. She was responding to a question from Democratic Republican Rich Brown, who asked if a 13-year-old impregnated during a rape would be forced to carry to term. Well, it's an opportunity, right? Oh my God. Rape emotionally scars the individual, Schmidt conceded, but if a baby is created, it is a human life. Democratic Representative Tavia Golonsky counted the pregnancy is often traumatic and dangerous on its own, adding to then force a survivor of rape to carry a pregnancy to term and go through childbirth is utterly vile. It only adds to the trauma they've already suffered. In South Carolina, supporters of a 2021 abortion ban added exceptions for rape and incest because it was the only way to get the law passed. During debate, Republican Senator Richard Cash argued against the exceptions. Punish the rapist, but it doesn't belong on the baby, he said. Democratic Senator Mia McLeod responded that it was obvious Cash had never been raped. Well, I have. You're looking at a sexual assault survivor, she added. She said, adding that the requiring rape victims to carry babies to term could lead them to desperate measures, including dangerous illegal abortions or suicide. New Hampshire has been banned abortion after 24 weeks of gestation, except for when the woman's health is threatened, though the state will soon add an exemption for fatal fetal anomalies. The Republican-led legislature has rejected attempts to add rape and incest exceptions. Republican Representative Beth Folsom, who said in January, that she's a rape survivor, argued the exceptions aren't necessary because rape victims carefully track their menstrual cycles and wouldn't wait 24 weeks to seek an abortion. An incest exception wasn't needed, she added, because that aggressor is going to make sure that young girl or woman has an abortion before anyone finds out. He said, what was it? Was it Todd Aiken? Is that the guy, you know, the legitimate rape guy? My God. Guess what state he was from? Mallory Schwartz, executive director of Pro-Choice Missouri, expressed concern that provisions in laws like the one in Texas that allow abortions past 6 weeks in medical emergencies will require doctors to wait until a patient appears to be dying to perform an abortion. And that would not surprise me. I mean, that's kind of how they, well, yeah. That's Missouri for you. Any of those kinds of pieces that are left up to interpretation are generally going to have a broad chilling effect on providers who don't want to jeopardize their career, or in this case, their, you know, their livelihood, their practice, ability to care for their patients, Schwartz said. And, you know, I would argue the freedom. If they're talking about prison, my God, you know, medical professionals having to, you know, decide between morals and ethics, or, you know, psychopaths trying to put you in prison because you're trying to do the right thing. Oh my God. Many bans outlaw abortion after 6 weeks when vaginal ultrasounds can first detect electrical activity in embryonic cells that may later become the heart. Proponents call them heartbeat bills, even though they're not actual heartbeats, arguing that cardiac activity is a reliable indicator of life. In Idaho, Housley has repeatedly testified against the state's abortion bans in the legislature, but said the lawmakers were uninterested in hearing about her experience. My baby had a heartbeat, but that's not the only thing a baby needs. Because, you know, had those other problems. Said Housley, you know, that wasn't from the quote, that was just me. If you're catching the audio only, anti-abortion politicians are not at all interested in the reality of the issue. They've hijacked the discussion, and that's why we are where we are. Hannah reported from Topeka, Kansas, Associated Press. All right, so, yo, that's, I mean, my God. So it's not just Missouri, it's not just Brian Seitz. You know, the argument from the right is that, you know, the Roe decision is simply taking the power out of the hands of the federal government and you know, placing it back into the hands of the states, right? So making it a local issue. Well, you might reconsider that when you consider the notion that what's happening now, even in places like Europe. I mean, we've covered on this program how the ultra-right movement here in the U.S. is you know, just a wing of the, I hate to sound like you know who talks about globalists, but you know, we'll just call it the international authoritarian movement. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory, folks. It's out in the open. I mean, the Russian invasion in Ukraine, CPAC being held in Orban's Hungary, you know, we've covered here just on this show, you know, whatever it is that the allegedly reformed, you know, ultra-nationalist Alexander Vucic is up to these days in Serbia, right? But then I came across this also. Activists rally behind Croatian woman denied abortion. What? So from Zagreb, Associated Press reports a group of civic activists in Croatia demonstrated Friday in support of a woman who was denied an abortion despite her fetus having serious health problems. Does this sound familiar to you? The activists stood outside the parliament building in Croatia's capital, Zagreb, demanding that authorities help Miranda Kavajda and ensure abortion rights are respected in the socially conservative country. Kavajda was 20 weeks pregnant when doctors informed her that her fetus had a brain tumor and no chance of a normal life. She said doctors refused to terminate the pregnancy and advised Kavajda to seek the procedure in neighboring Slovenia instead. The case is get a map, folks. Okay, the case has rekindled a years-long debate about abortion in Croatia, a member of the European Union. Abortions are legal and allowed after the 10th week of pregnancy if there is a serious health risk to the woman or the fetus. So what's the freaking problem here? Well, Medical Ethics Commission is reviewing Kavajda's case. Croatian media reported that doctors said they were unsure of the procedural regulations for ending such an advanced pregnancy and McDonald's coupons. The existing law that permits abortions dates back to 78, when the country was part of the communist-run former Yugoslavia, right? Croatia became an independent country. We covered that on this channel. Apparently, yeah, it's a thing. President Zoran gonna get some mad emails. President Zoran Milanovic on Wednesday described Kavaita's ordeal as an example of conservative regression. Activists at Friday's demonstration demanded punishment for the medical professionals who denied Kavaita an abortion. An open letter read at the protest said her situation is the fight of every woman. We're sorry, we live in a state which puts someone's beliefs before the dignity, health, and life of women and children, the letter read. We stand here united in solidarity. Oh, that's it. So yeah, it's not just a local issue here, folks. You know, meanwhile, as Croatians are fighting tooth and nail to pull themselves out of the 20th century, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, no relation, is himself fighting tooth and nail to pull his drag, kicking and screaming, his state back into the 16th century. Tennessee governor signs bill regulating medical abortions. Can you believe it, folks? Nashville AP. Tennessee will soon restrict the dispensing of abortion pills. Abortion pills. My God. Imposing harsh penalties on doctors who violate them under legislation signed into law by Republican Governor Bill Lee. And I want to make sure that I've got this pulled up correctly here. What is it? Let's see. Associated Press has reported in the past, and this is just a little FYI, Associated Press and New York Times have reported in the past that research shows that 54% of U.S. abortions happen by the pill. Okay, 54%. The measure, which Lee signed on Thursday, will go into effect January 1st, 2023. Once enacted, a medical clinician will be required to be physically present when abortion pills are administered to a patient, even though federal regulations now allow mail delivery nationwide. The issue has become even more important as the Supreme Court seems posed for some bull. To date, 19 states have placed restrictions on accessing medical abortion. These are in a different order here. This is AP reported. This one is from Don't Hate the Messenger. Okay, this is from May 6th. All right. The drugs may be dispensed only by qualified physicians, which would include barring physicians from doing so. Violators would face a Class E felony and up to a $50,000 fine. Yo. However, according to abortion law experts, it's an unsettled question whether states can even restrict access to abortion pills in the wake of FDA's decision earlier this year to no longer require women to pick up the abortion medication in person. The move allowed millions of American women to get a prescription via an online consultation and receive the pills through the mail. The general rule is that federal law preempts conflicting state law. We learned this back in, I think it was around 1865, that folks, you know, in a lot of these states passing this kind of legislation got the point of a bayonet. Laura Hermer, a professional at the, well, she didn't say all of that, but, you know, Mitchell Hamline School of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota, said the first part of that to Associated Press. No lawsuit has been filed challenging Tennessee's newly enacted restrictions. Meanwhile, the in-person requirement had long been opposed by medical societies, including the American Medical Association, which said the restrictions offer no clear benefit to patients. Use of abortion pills has been rising in the U.S. since 2000 when the FDA approved mifepristone. See, I'm a guy. I don't know what these things are called because, you know, but like, hey, we're figuring it out. All right. We're learning together here. The main drug used in medication abortions. More than half of U.S. abortions are now done with pills rather than surgery, according to the Guttmacher Institute, a research group that supports abortion rights. 2 drugs are required. The first is mifepristone, blocks a hormone needed to maintain a pregnancy. The second drug, misoprostol, taken 1 to 2 days earlier, empties the uterus. Both drugs are available as generics and also used to treat other conditions. And yeah, so that's the way the cookie crumbles there. I mean, it doesn't get any more disgusting than that here, folks. And we're going to take a look at one more before we jump into the break here. Again, Associated Press, this is from the 7th here. AP reports abortion rights may rest on governors' races in some states, and this should be interesting. I'll include some of my thoughts after the break on how some of these will go. I have a feeling all 4 leading Republicans in Pennsylvania governor races have vowed to ban abortion if given the chance. Give them the chance. Give them the chance. They'll do it. In Georgia, one top Republican candidate for governor wants to outlaw all abortions. The sitting Republican governor is backed by an anti-abortion lobby, but refuses to clarify his positions. And in Michigan, all but one of the 5 leading Republicans running for governor oppose abortion, even in cases of rape or incest, because they're just terrible, terrible people. I call it what it is, right? The fight for Congress often dominates midterm elections, but the revelation this week that the Supreme Court may soon overturn its landmark Roe v. Wade decision has thrust candidates for governor and their positions on abortion into the forefront 2012 campaigns. And it's getting weird in Pennsylvania, that's for sure. In a handful of battleground states with Republican-controlled state legislatures, every GOP candidate for governor supports severe abortion restrictions, if not a complete ban with no exceptions. That's prompting urgent warnings from Democrats that women's access to abortion in some states may rest entirely on which party wins the governor's race this fall. This is an issue that is now front and center in the governor's race, said Pennsylvania AG Josh Shapiro, his state's presumed Democratic nominee for governor. That's what Michigan's Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, is doing as she prepares for challenging re-election this fall. Anticipating that Roe would be overturned or weakened, Whitmer asked the Michigan Supreme Court last month to declare a state constitutional right to abortion and to strike down a near total abortion ban that would go back into effect if Roe is overruled. That law, which dates to the 1800s, has an exception when the woman's life is at risk, but not for cases of rape or incest. Because, making America great again has its limits, I guess. And assuming that some states break that limit at the 20th century. Thank goodness. I'm using every tool at my disposal, she says. I'm going to fight like hell to protect this right for women in the state of Michigan. Regardless of what happens with the SCOTUS, we have an opportunity in Michigan. And the situation is different in Pennsylvania and Georgia, where there's no outright ban on the books, but Republican candidates for governor have indicated that they would support a full ban if given the chance. Most refused to clarify their position in recent days when asked directly by the AP. Pennsylvania law currently allows abortions during the first 24 weeks of pregnancy, but all 4 leading Republican candidates for governor have told the Pro-Life Coalition of Pennsylvania in questionnaire responses that they support legal protection for all preborn children from abortion. In other words, banning an abortion of any diagnosed pregnancy, according to Mike McMahon, the president of the organization. Google it, okay? I'm not even getting yelled at for that. 2 of the Pennsylvania Republicans, Bill McSwain and Lou Barletta, said they support exceptions for rape, incest, or to protect life of the mother. The other 2, Doug Mastriano and Dave White, said they support no exceptions. Only White agreed to discuss his position in an AP interview this week. The others declined because, there's scum. And boy, that's the story, right? Look, if you live in one of these states, you're going to be seeing a lot of things on social media. You're going to be seeing a lot of things in your local news. Look, I urge you to do the research yourself. Look, we're going to take a quick short break and jump right back into it. If day trading is too stressful or you just don't want to deal with the volatility of the market, M1 Finance has got you covered. This easy-to-use trading platform basically lets you build your own index fund out of companies that you believe in. And if you use my link at chainsawccc.com/M1, M1 Finance will give you a free $30 just for signing up and funding your M1 account. Get started today. chainsawccc.com/M1. $30 is waiting for you, bro. Webull is the stock app and trading platform that everybody's using, and I mean everybody's using. You've seen it all over YouTube. I use it on my own channel to show what's happening in the market. You pay 0 commission fees. You can own fractional shares. You can even trade in cryptocurrencies and access real-time market data. Use my referral link, chainsawccc.com/Weeble. That's chainsawccc.com/Weeble, Webull, and get you 2 free stocks. Simply by opening an account and depositing any amount, get you 2 free stocks from Weeble. Believe me, you're going to want this one. All right, next we're going to hear from the leading Disney princess, but first I want to share with you some groundbreaking announcements. This is from New York Attorney General Leticia James announcing new legislation to increase funding for healthcare in her state. Let's take a look.
We're here today to announce new legislation to protect and expand access to abortion. This new bill, sponsored by State Senator Cordell Clear and Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, will create a dedicated state program that will give financial resources to abortion providers in our state. Again, give financial resources to abortion providers in our state. And these funds will help New Yorkers who need financial support to seek abortions. And it will also provide and support the influx of individuals who have and will continue to come to New York from other states to seek abortions. Because if Roe is overturned, 26 states will ban and/or are likely to ban abortion.
That's New York State Attorney General Leticia James leading the charge. Quite actually leading the charge. Eric Schmidt, are you listening? And then there's a part B to this press conference here I want to show you.
There are trigger laws currently in place that will result in a complete ban in some states. At this point in time, I think it's really critically important that individuals, including Minority Leader McConnell, understand that the vast majority of Americans believe in the right to choose, believe in abortion, believe in safe abortions, and that we do not want to go backwards.
And, you know, she's right. What... recent polls had shown, I mentioned earlier from AP, but I've seen other polling that has shown that less than 20% of Americans, according to some recent poll data, believe that abortion should be legal. Less than 20% believe it should be, or that it should be illegal. Let me try that again. So less than 20% of Americans believe that abortion should be illegal and criminal across the board, regardless of the circumstances. Less than 20%. Okay. The overwhelming majority of Americans have opted to agree with reason and science. And in the case of legislation across states that do not allow for things like treatment of ectopic pregnancies, which without treatment end up in bleeding to death and dying. They've chosen to opt with science, so let's go with that, right? The party of pro-life seems to be the party of pro-death, depending on the circumstances. So don't let that one fool you. Next, and speaking of those with no regard for reason or accountability, Ted Cruz weighs in on how overturning Roe v. Wade won't necessarily be all that bad. Let's take a look.
Kind of angry leftists, many of whom are pretty ignorant and don't even know what overturning Roe means, I think a month afterwards are going to be surprised, wait, nothing about my life changed. In other parts of the country that are not bright blue, in redder states, in states like Tennessee, states like Texas, you're going to see some meaningful restrictions on abortion, and it's going to vary state by state how extensive those restrictions are. That was the framers' view in the Constitution, is to let the rules in each state reflect the values of the citizens of those states. But in the redder states, there are fewer people that are going to be horrified by that.
Yeah, about that. And who is that? Who is that guy? I don't watch. Apparently, Ted Cruz has a podcast or something. I don't watch the Verdict with Ted Cruz, but like, who is that guy? Is that like the guy? You know, pull this up here. Who is this guy? Is this the guy who like changes Ted Cruz's socks or something? Like, who is this guy? It's just like, who is this guy? I have no idea. If you watch this crap, let me know, because I don't watch it. I don't really have time for all that. But let's. Oh my God. Finally, Ted Cruz weighs in on the election successes for Democrats in the fight of the Roe v. Wade decision. And I'll go into my opinion, not necessarily response, but my opinion on the topic here. Because, I got some opinions about some things.
That the outcome is that the court does strike down Roe versus Wade. I can tell you Democrats in Washington are holding on to that as their Hail Mary chance to save the midterms. They believe that people will be horrified and that'll help them win. And I got to tell you, more
it makes a bunch of sense, however,
than a few Republican senators are nervous that's the case. There's several of us who are conservatives who've been trying to make the case to the nervous Nellies in our conference. It'll be okay. This is going to be fine. And I actually think it probably will not have much of an effect on the midterms, and to the extent it has an effect, it will be a positive effect. Here's why I think it will have less of an effect than the Democratic strategists think. Because the people who are most dismayed about that are hard leftists that are clustered in bright blue states like New York, California. Nothing's going to change in those states. That the outcome is
nothing's going to change in those states. And listen, to a point, let me just put it like this. I agree, but I disagree. And I'll tell you why that is. Okay, this is a decision that will affect many people in red states, obviously. As some who we might not have originally recognized as supporters have already been making their voices heard on behalf of, the pro-choice position, all over social media. And this is great news, or at least it should be. The problem I'm seeing, and why I agree with Ted Cruz, that it may not have such a negative impact on the GOP, is that in these red states, where some voters who haven't spent years or decades concerning themselves with these kind of issues, the swing voters, people who aren't typically interested in politics at all, people who vote on or, who vote when they feel that their morals, are aligned with the issue, right? They vote when they vote where their morals stand. And yes, I'm going to be the one to say it here, performative activists. The ones. They post nonsensical memes online to show their support and then go back to, words with friends, or, they go back to work, act like, nothing ever happened. They're doing it for social points. The ones who show up at protests to take a selfie, and get out of there before the plastic bags start getting thrown at, Nazis and they start pulling guns and shooting people. The very people, yes, they're doing it for social points, but that's a good thing. The very people who inadvertently and unknowingly are working to normalize an otherwise radical position in their community, these are the people we need. They're not the activists. They are not 100% on the issue, but they're part of the message. They are literally acting to normalize the message, again, in communities like, rural America, or rural Missouri, where these kind of topics are, otherwise taboo. Yes, it may not be the safest thing for them to just go out and scream at the top of their lungs, about their position or about their support for something that they would otherwise not agree with, or let's say the vast majority, at least at this time, of the community disagrees with or doesn't know that they would agree with. Because seriously, how many people have actually read House Bill 2810? In the state of Missouri, let's be honest here, other than the folks who, are either doing what I do or are political activists or are out there, been doing the grunt work for decades. How many normal people, let's just call a spade a spade. How many normal people who go to job, work their 9 to 5, they're working at the grocery store, they're working at fast food, they're doing a construction job. How many of them you think have stopped and taken the time to be like, well, let's see what Republicans are up to in my home state. Let's see what Brian Seitz, if he knows what he's talking about, or if I can just turn on Newsmax and just get my, my bullshit from there. But I mean, they very well, again, swing voters, people who are working to normalize these kinds of messages, well, they're being attacked by leftists who feel that they themselves are on the front lines, who in turn are having their ego stroked by other people who are either too afraid to speak up and speak out, by those who actually think that a fraction of a minority can convince people to join their side and join their cause by belittling others for wanting to join their side and join their cause and help. This might be the only reason why rural voters are afraid of Democrats, and why the reactionary right has been able to infiltrate school boards, as we've discussed before. I don't think it needs to be discussed. You already know. City councils, these small towns and communities. I mean, Republicans are on the park boards in small towns, for God's sakes. Okay? You know, not just here in Missouri, but across the country. I mean, you name it. They're on the park boards of towns that with names you can't pronounce. You know, the left just sucks at this, and it shows. The only blessing to come out of the reactionary left's reacting is that maybe, just maybe, regular people can identify this activity and put a stop to it, and start reaching out to regular people who don't spend their days and nights sitting alone in a room talking to a screen. How sad. Democrats lost in 2016 because they failed to get the message out that Hillary wasn't a worse choice than Donald Trump. Okay? You figure that out. Republicans won in 2016 because they literally will take any support from anyone that they can muster. I mean, Mitch McConnell and Marjorie Taylor Greene are both members of the same party. Okay, compare that to Joe Manchin and AOC, also members of the same party. Different, but closer, okay? Democracy requires votes. What it doesn't need is reactionaries scaring away potential votes. Beau of the Fifth Column. If you don't know about the guy, he's got a bigger beard than me, and he's pretty freaking smooth. He's got a great video about this, which I'll link down below. It's from 2021, where he compares this very thing, political activism, to a spear. You know, he says that if the idea is to change society, you have to change thought. You know, progressivism shouldn't have gatekeepers. I mean, these people are literally killing morale. And I mean, don't take my word for it. I'll show you how easy this should be. Just to the south, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson.
What would you say to those women who seek an abortion, who don't have the money to travel, who don't have the money to raise a child? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, again, that's where your heart goes out to them. I've had to deal with those very difficult circumstances of rape and incest as governor, and it's difficult. And so you have to understand that. You have to provide services, and I believe that we want to increase the services for maternal health, to increase the services for adoption services as well. And so we want to invest in those areas that will help those women with very difficult circumstances of the pregnancy. But secondly, I think to your point, the rape and incest exceptions will continue to be a part of the debate. Right now, we do not have rape and incest as exceptions under the Arkansas trigger law, but I think that will be a part of the debate.
Would you like to see those exceptions?
Those exceptions are important. Yes, I expressed whenever I signed the law that I would prefer the rape and incest exceptions to be in there. And even though we have the trigger law, I expect those exceptions to be a significant part of the debate in the future, even though we're going to immediately go to restrict abortions in the exceptions, with the exception of the life of the mother in danger.
Why do you support those exceptions?
Well, it's been even though we believe life begins at conception, that we try to save lives, the life of the unborn.
Blah, blah, blah. Doesn't even matter, okay? The point is that he's the governor, and he signed a bill that has no exceptions, okay? Look, this should be easy. This should be real easy. Especially in Missouri, especially in Arkansas, my God. The governor signed a bill that does not include exceptions for rape and incest. The governor goes on ABC News and says, don't know that we should agree with that, but like, he signed it into law, so it's trash. Okay? In the state of Missouri, you got a dirtbag like Representative Seitz, who's like, tubal pregnancies, ectopic pregnancies is, treatments, 30-year prison sentence. Like, this is not something that should be hard. This isn't. But I tell you what's making it hard. Well, I already told you what's making it hard. So look, if you're an activist and you're at the tip of the spear, maybe focus a little bit less about what's going on at the support staff, the shaft of the spear. Because that's how you scare voters away. Especially if you're already admitting that you're scaring away voters, or you're scaring away support. Yeah, this isn't good. This isn't something to be proud of. This isn't something to shake your fist as a success. Maybe worry more about taking down people like Asa Hutchinson, and a little less worried about people taking down performative protesters, because my God, they're on your side, and you know the majority rules. Do you not understand how democracy works? You need votes, you need voters, you need people. And some people don't have time to sit. Some people aren't affected by this at all. And that's okay. Some people are affected by this a little. Some people just now found out that they were affected by this even a little bit. Take the support when you can take it, because anything else is just bullshit. We're going to take a quick break, jump right back into it. If day trading is too stressful, or you just don't want to deal with the volatility of the market, M1 Finance has got you covered. This easy-to-use trading platform basically lets you build your own index fund out of companies that you believe in. And if you use my link at chainsawccc.com/M1, M1 Finance will give you a free $30 just for signing up and funding your M1 account. Get started today. chainsawccc.com/M1. $30 is waiting for you, bro. Now, before the break, I promised you Ron DeSantis, and I give you Ron DeSantis.
You can see at a college campus students flying the hammer and sickle from the old Soviet Union flag. You will see students that will have T-shirts with Che Guevara on the T-shirts. You will see students that will idolize people like Mao Zedong. That to me bespeaks of a tremendous ignorance about what those individuals represented and the evils that communism inflicted on people throughout the world. And so our goal here is to stand for the truth, is to make sure that Florida every year will be able to speak the truth.
Ron DeSantis, everybody, is in his announcement for honoring victims of Communism Day. But no, it gets weirder than that, and I'll add my 2 cents in just a second here.
There's focus, of course, on places in Eastern Europe for obvious reasons. There are probably more Marxists on college faculties in the United States than they're all in all of Eastern Europe combined, okay? They don't want to go back to communism. So this legislation will make sure that our students and people throughout the state of Florida are reminded about the atrocities committed by Mao Zedong when he led communist China.
Again, Ron DeSantis, everybody, my God. And again, this is him speaking. He signed legislation that establishes Victims of Communism Day. And before we get into who it is who sponsored such legislation, because that that gets really interesting. He mentions Eastern Europe. Now, again, we've discussed on this show the Russian invasion, what's going on in Serbia, what's going on in Hungary. I think it's easy. Wow, swear to God, it's so easy to agree with Republicans from Florida these days. Yes, there are a lot less folks in Eastern Europe, at least in the leadership, looking toward communism, because most of them are looking toward far-right authoritarianism. Call it what you will. But yes, I definitely think Ron DeSantis is onto something here, despite how disgusting it looks. But who is the brainchild behind Victims of Communist Day, and what are they doing now? Yes, this is New York Post. Don't cry. Florida poll behind Victims of Communism Day. Named state education chief. Oh, Jesus Christ. Are you kidding me right now? Florida state senator who pushed for a mandatory Victims of Communism Day in public schools has been tapped as the Sunshine State's next education chief. Governor Ron DeSantis on Thursday formally recommended Manny Diaz to serve as Florida's new education commissioner. Of course he did. A Republican from Hialeah Gardens and a former high school teacher and assistant principal. Diaz would be the first Hispanic to serve in the role. Manny Diaz has done a great job in the legislature on education issues, ranging from teacher pay to parental rights and choice. Neat. DeSantis said in a statement, "I'm confident that he will serve our state as well as the Commissioner of Education." Known as a staunch conservative, Diaz co-sponsored legislation to mandate an annual lesson on how victims suffered under these communist regimes through poverty, starvation, migration, systemic lethal violence, and suppression of speech. The measure passed the Florida legislature and is awaiting DeSantis' signature. Diaz also supported moves by DeSantis pushing eliminating CRT and woke training in Florida schools and businesses, according to a release. Since DeSantis appoints the State Board of Education, the recommendation is likely to result in Diaz's confirmation. If approved, Diaz will replace outgoing Commissioner Richard Cochran, who will exit the post at the end of this month. It's an honor to be recommended by Governor DeSantis to serve as education commissioner, Diaz said in a statement. "For my entire career, I've worked to improve the education system, to serve Florida's students, parents, and teachers." And apparently not in that order. "I'm excited to get to work, continuing the mission of the governor to make Florida the education state." Yeah, book banning, education. Funny how those, here's the thing. If I guess Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, if things don't work out too good for him in this whole senatorial race, I mean, I guess there's always an outlet for him as our education chief here in the state of Missouri. But that's another page for another time. Listen, first I want to thank everybody for tuning in, checking out the show today. Listen, if you haven't had a chance to check out the new Patreon, it's brand new. Of course, we had the ad pulled by YouTube because we might have used voice samples from a guy who likes to talk about globalist. I can't even do it now. You know the guy. He's not allowed to be on YouTube no more. But we used voice samples from his goofy show on his goofy website, and YouTube decided that was against the community standards. I get it. I don't like it or agree, but I totally get why the algorithm picked that up. Not really sure why the appeal didn't go through, but the ad was pulled, and that's perfectly fine. But you can check us out at patreon.com/chainsawccc, and you can support independent media for as little as $3 a month. That is less than the cost of a caramel latte, or less than the cost of a pack of cigarettes if you're watching from Kentucky, right? But don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you in the flippity fling flong rock and roll.